Alright, this video is a continuation of the last video to demonstrate how to set up a project in Aptana, actually. And we're going to do that so that we can actually debug and troubleshoot our Django website. So right now our Django website is running under IIS on port 8003, and that's important to remember, 8003. What we want to do is create an Aptana project. So to do this, we're going to right click and run Aptana as administrator because we're running in IIS 7 and sorry, not IIS 7, but Windows 7. We're going to launch it. We're going to right click over here in the Package Explorer to create a new project. And it's important we select this PyDev folder and specifically the PyDev Django project. That's very important to select that particular template. We're going to name this first site, which is the same name as our website's root directory. And we're going to provide the path to the root folder, which is first site. This will match the same thing. Actually here, just a minute. I have to clean up some work that I did on here earlier so that we don't confuse the editor. Okay. So let's try this again. First site. Okay. Don't worry about that. Ignore that error. We're going to hit next, and we're going to leave the defaults. Now, when we do this, one unfortunate aspect of it is we already had the site set up, and because of that, it went and moved a bunch of the content that we already had into the wrong folder. So the init, py, the settings, the URLs, and the views, as well as the WSGI, all need to be moved back into the sub first site folder. Once we do that, you'll notice this icon changes to a package. So this is the way this should all look at this point. Now it's a really common mistake to come into here, start working on the views py file, and put a breakpoint and assume that we're going to go ahead and be able to launch this right here. If you see this dialog in Aptana, then you are doing something wrong when you're trying to troubleshoot and debug Django. So you should cancel here, because that's going to be running the Python interpreter and debugging the file like it's a Python file rather than like it's a Django view. So instead, what you want to remember to do when you're working on this, you set a breakpoint, but then you select in your Package Explorer the top level project itself. And from there, you can go ahead and launch the site by pressing the debugger. And it will set up the site here at this URL. And if we navigate to that URL, we will be able to see our content. But it's hit our breakpoint successfully. And it's ready to start up the debug perspective, which we're going to say yes. And it's hit our breakpoint. And if we want to, we can actually step through each line of code, look at stuff before we actually let it run freely out to the browser window. So this is great. What happens when we want to use the static area to host JavaScript files, PNG files, JPEGs, CSS files, and the like? Well, to test that functionality, what I've done is I've got a picture here of penguins, and we're going to drop that into the static area of our first site. And then I'm going to go over to the templates and look at the indexed HTML template and make sure I run Notepad as administrator, and edit the index.html file. And I'm going to go ahead and put in an image tag pointing to our new static area and point at penguins.jpg. And then I'm going to save that file and come back to this website. Now again, it hits our breakpoint in Aptana. We'll let it fly, come back to it, and you'll notice that this isn't showing up. That's okay. What we can do is take a peek at it, and we'll see that Django is throwing a 404 error. Right off the bat, we know this is a problem because we want the static area to not be interpreted by the Django runtime. The reason it is interpreted by the Django runtime right now is we're looking at port 8000, which is explicitly the Django service that's running. That is not the IIS website that we're running. The IIS website is actually located under port 8003. Okay? So, if we want to see this working on the published site, what we need to do is ignore port 8000 here and just look at what the modifications look like on 8003. Sure enough, our penguins show up. So our static area is actually working, even though the main index HTML content here is actually being rendered by the Django Python runtime. The static image is being pulled from the static area using the default IIS settings without Python, and the two can live together happily without any sort of worries about cross-site scripting or weird issues like that.